Ball State with a 25-23 heart-pounding victory over Northern Illinois to win the Bronze Stalk Trophy. Coming up next, Ball State stays at home to play against the Miami Redhawks for the Red Bird rivalry. We'll break all that down next. This is Linking the Chains.
Third and goal, looks toward Magwood. Nobody's open. Samanza scampers. He has open daylight, jumps toward the end zone, barrels in, and he is in.
Samanza looking left towards the end zone. It is caught. Touchdown. Tanner Koziel.
Caught by Gilly. Breaks one tackle, breaks a second. Malcolm Gilly's off to the races. Malcolm Gilly scores.
Welcome back to another episode of Linking the Chains. I'm your host, Isaiah Rosner, and today I'm joined by Caden Vincent. Caden, a little bit later of an episode this week with Ball State getting Maction underway, or at least midweek Mactions. They have their Tuesday game going on, but first, before we get to that, we've got to talk about that Northern Illinois game. That was one of the greatest finishes. I mean, maybe saying Ball State history would be hyperbole, but that last-second field goal, a 52-yarder to win it, incredible.
Yeah, you can definitely feel the energy and the environment from that kick. And remember, the kick previous was blocked, so you knew there was some anticipation going into that kick and how Jackson Corville would respond, and he responded in a tremendous way with that game-winning field goal that, again, everyone was just so electric right after that, and it really kind of brought Ball State to the next level.
Well, he had made his career high that game, a 50-yarder, and then he broke it with that 52-yarder. I was lucky enough to be standing under the goalpost for all of those kicks. You can see me on the highlight video as well, but I was just holding the cable for the handheld camera. But either way, Ball State, I mean, that last drive, they start at the 26-yard line, have 15 seconds to play. I guess before that, we could say 50-yard field goal, make it an 8-point game with 8:52 to play. It was looking good, and then NIU gets that touchdown, and then they drop the 2-point conversion, and Terry O'Brien with the touchdown, and then they fail on the 2-point conversion. Ball State punts with 2:36 to play, but then NIU, Ethan Hampton throws an interception with 2:26 to go. Joey Stemler picking him off, and it was looking great for the Cardinals, but then that 33-yarder just inexplicably blocked on that play, and then NIU makes a 47-yarder with 15 seconds to go. Looked like it was over, and then a 34-yard deep play on the left side of the field to Malcolm Gilly, that is, and then the 52-yarder to win it. What an incredible performance. Getting more into the overall game, Caden, your namesake, Caden Samanza, the quarterback, of course, and Tanner Koziel, how about both their big days? Samanza 20 for 33, 211 yards, and then Koziel 9 catches, 78 yards, and 2 scores. What do you take away from especially that Koziel performance, just lighting up the stat sheet yet again?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, just time and time again, we continue to see him perform at the highest levels. I said going into his last 5 games, he's had 8 receptions or more and all 50 yards, and that's just key contributing to Ball State's offense, and that's allowing Ball State to control their pace, not only in the line of scrimmage, but of course trusting Caden Samanza, being able to get them down there, and whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, it's resulting in points for the Cardinals, and that's so critical, especially going down the stretch.
He's such a valuable asset. I'm realizing now that he's one of the best tight ends in the country. I think I didn't realize how good he was, because being at a smaller program, you don't expect to have people that are that good. But he really is this season. And now another thing that was interesting. Now Braden Sloan did get plenty of pass work, I think or receiving work, I should say. I think he was second on the team. Braden Sloan, 4 receptions, 47 yards, but rushing wise, he wasn't the leader of this game. I think that's the first time this season. 51 yards for Sloan on 17 carries, and then Vaughn Pemberton, 14 carries for 69 yards. So I guess the question then is that a good thing for Ball State that they're getting some diversity in the run game, or is that concerning for Sloan?
No, I think it's definitely, it's alerting in both ways. It's positive for Pemberton being able to get a lot of extra carries, and honestly, he was able to take advantage of those moments. And I feel like for Sloan, who's been getting a lot more carries throughout the season, we kind of wanted to see how Ball State would react with both running backs, and both provided a lot of offense and a lot of kind of key plays that helped Ball State down the stretch.
Well, one of the craziest stats from this game is that Ball State won the turnover battle by 4.
Yeah.
I mean, that you talk so much, or you hear people talking so much about how much the turnover battle can impact who wins the game. So often, if you get it +2, you feel like you have it won. But +4, yet they were down with 15 seconds to go with the ball at their own 26-yard line. So what does that say about the team that they it's just a crazy stat. Plus, they win the turnover battle by 4. Don't turn it over. Get 2 picks, 2 fumble recoveries, and yet still needed that last second kick to win it.
Well, I mean, we looked at it all season long. We knew NIU was coming off that Notre Dame, but we kind of could tell that NIU was trying to get right back on track, especially with Ball State. And Ball State, remember, the game before, they got in a hostile environment with Vanderbilt, and before that was Kent State. So they kind of were going back and forth. So you knew it was a huge matchup for Ball State, and you felt like who was going to win the turnover battle, it really felt like that was the winner who was going to win this game. And Ball State ultimately dominated. But yeah, the fact that they did win by 1 point, I think that just speaks highly of both teams, either on Ball State's offensive and defensive side, and NIU able to kind of control the line of scrimmage as well as kind of fed off on Ball State's side as well.
Ball State 222 pass yards to Northern Illinois, 232 rushing wise, 392 to Northern Illinois, that's total yards, 392 total yards for the Cardinals, 374 for Northern Illinois, 170 in the rush column, which clearly wins the game. And then time of possession, once again, it's just been one of the key themes we've talked about every single week on this podcast, is that Ball State continues to dominate time of possession. And there was that 1 week, the Vanderbilt one, not really. But besides playing that another elite time of possession team, this one, 34-50 versus 25-10 versus NIU. So dominating time of possession and dominating turnovers, winning in yards, and yet still barely getting it to the finish line.
Yeah.
But at the same time, time of possession.
Right, but it goes back once again to controlling the line of scrimmage. And we talked about the running backs and obviously Tanner Cozio as well as some other offensive weapons for the Cardinals. But it kind of just goes to show you that Caden Samanza has a lot of opportunities, a lot of weapons on the offensive side that he's able to, take them down the field, but also these lengthy drives that really helps Ball State's offense as well as their defense, because they get more time on the sidelines to kind of figure out how they want to go about the next play on offensively.
All right, well, that will do it for segment 1, but next up, we've got plenty to talk about with this upcoming Miami of Ohio game, the Redbird rivalry, next here on Linking the Chains.
We've taken advantage. There's a lot of game film to study on Miami. They played 8 games. So obviously we know this football team. They're the defending champions. They've won 3 in a row. They really dominated the last 3 weeks. They had the opening MAC loss on the road at Toledo, and they really dominated the last 3 weeks, played really good football. So it's going to be a great challenge. Obviously, it's a rivalry game as well, another trophy game back-to-back. Our guys are excited about that opportunity, and been glad that we've been able to get a few guys some time to rest up, heal up, and they've done a great job of taking care of, getting extra treatment, getting themselves in the pool, just trying to do the best they can, knowing that, this is the only, window that we've had so far.
Notice the past 2 weeks, when you walk through the hallways of the complex, there's just reminders of the fact that this is a rivalry game, that it's for a trophy, similar to last week, same with this week. Is that by design that you really want to make sure these guys know that?
Yeah, no question. Obviously, last week, going into that game a week ago, it was a 5-game season. Well, now it's a 4-game season, and we're playing some good football teams coming up, and we're only concerned about Miami right now. And again, they're playing as well as anybody is in the conference right now, playing very good complementary football. They're playing well in all 3 phases. And yeah, absolutely, man. When you have a chance, it's a trophy game on top of that. There's certainly something at stake. And, our guys know that. And even if there was nothing on the TVs in the hallway to suggest the Redbird rivalry and all that, our guys still know. And obviously it's against Miami, and, really not a whole lot that needs to be said.
What has given this team trouble when it comes to facing Miami? I think it's 4 years in a row
Yeah.
you guys have lost.
Yeah, there's no question. We've had some gut-wrenching endings to some of those games the last 4 years. There's no excuses. We didn't get it done. And so you can point to a number of things, but at the end of the day, we didn't get it done. And they were some gut-wrenching, very tough to swallow, especially 2 of those being the last game of the season, which is tough. When you have those gut-wrenching losses like that, and then you got to swallow that and chew on that as you head into the offseason. very difficult that way. So you give them credit because they did what it took in order to be able to get the win in a close game at the end. We did not. So again, I don't really think there's a whole lot that needs to be said to our guys in terms of motivation, anything like that. But we are preparing ourselves for a 60-minute war, a street fight mentality, just like we discussed a week ago. It took all 60 minutes that were on that clock last week, and it's MAC football, man. It's good football, and obviously this is the first, Maction game of the year. There's going to be a lot, obviously, of people watching. It's great, being on ESPN at 8 o'clock. It's going to seem extremely late by the time that thing starts. But our guys are chomping at the bit to attack this, what we've already done so far. A lot of mental work had to walk through, but we're excited tomorrow will be what will be our Tuesday. We don't live on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays anymore. We just talk it. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Tomorrow, Saturday's Wednesday, and just tried to lay out the schedule for the guys, how we'll attack that here over the weekend.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here on Linking the Chains. He's Caden Vincent. I'm Isaiah Rosner. We've got the Redbird rivalry coming up, and first of all, before we get into that, how about talking about what we are each doing for that one? Caden, you're shooting a video for that game?
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing live content and video and posting it all over social media on BSU Sports Link throughout the night. So definitely a lot of things to look out for on social media.
Well, great plug there at BSU Sports Link. For me, I've had some announcers for Ball State Sports Link digital radio come on in the past. Well, this time I'm on the air. I'll just be doing the pregame and halftime show. I'll be the host as well as the producer, and probably do some spotting for AJ as well. Make sure he can see who everyone is, give him some stats, that sort of thing. So should be a fun time. But getting into the actual matchup, Ball State versus Miami, the Redbird rivalry. The other major rivalry for Ball State, of course, is the one against Northern Illinois, the Huskies, who they played last week. That's the Bronze Stalk Trophy. And Ball State now has won 3 straight of those. So now for Miami, the game against Miami, what would you say are the keys to continuing that streak?
Yeah, well, something that we saw against NIU is how Ball State was able to force a lot of turnovers, and that gave them a lot of momentum and advantages, especially late in that game. And I feel like it's very similar. Miami is a very mature team. They know how to win, and they've really been on a roll up as of late. So for Ball State, it's going to be able to, can they control the turnover battle, and can they force Miami into 3rd and long?
Well, how about Blaine Gabbert's little brother for Miami of Ohio, Brett Gabbert, starting at QB, 1,700 yards on the season, 13 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, but he has gotten sacked 18 times, so a chance for that Ball State pass rush to potentially get home. But overall, just talking about pass versus running, how about the team stats for the season? They get 227 pass yards per game versus just 128 rush yards per game. So that would suggest Ball State needs to, of course, focus more on the passing. But then you look further and you see how much more they've been running the ball recently, particularly in their last game that you mentioned. And that's partially because they were so far ahead, but how about 241 pass yards and 277 rush yards on the day? So for a Ball State defense that has been up and down against the run, I mean, to be fair, they've been much better recently, but what do you focus on with this team?
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, you got to talk about, you mentioned 13 touchdowns and 7 interceptions for Gabbert. In his last 3 games, he's had 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He has been very impressive, and he's kind of started to look like that Miami offense that we saw last year, taking that run into the MAC championship and able to beat Toledo. And that's what Ball State needs to be able to stop, is can they force Gabbert into some difficult situations? And if Ball State can get off the field, then we know that time of possession, that has been a key component to Ball State's season, and especially as of late, if they're able to control the ground game and as well as time of possession, Ball State could be winning this game.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, Miami's defense, you mentioned time of possession. They're a strong defense, though, one of the best in the MAC, held Central Michigan to 162 total yards. So are you thinking a lot of running for Ball State, or are you thinking more to keep with the balanced attack?
Well, I mean, we talked about it, how Ball State's offense was able to do a lot through the air and on the ground, but Miami is a very tough defense, especially through the air. So I feel like they're definitely going to be looking more for Pepperton as well as Sloan to create a lot of offensive chances for Ball State and move them down the field.
Well, both teams have won their last 2 MAC games. Miami actually their last 3. In fact, their last 3 games overall against Eastern Michigan, Ohio, and Central Michigan. Ball State has won their last 2 games. So how big is this game? Because thinking about it, isn't this pretty much a necessary game to contend for MAC championship?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, this may be the closest the standings have been in a very long time. I mean, Miami currently in 2nd in the MAC and Ball State just a little bit low at 7. One game separates these two teams. So with Ball State being at 2-2 in the MAC and Miami being 3-1, a win here could potentially get Ball State one step closer to getting into the MAC championship. And it just goes to show you how exciting midweek Maction really is, that how poignant and how powerful these games really can be and how quick things can change. And I think it just kind of all depends, is you got to take one step at a time. And I know it's the cliche, but it really is, especially in these key games that can lead to bigger opportunities throughout.
This is the first week of midweek Maction, and what a fun little thing to do. I mean, we all see football on Saturdays, on Sundays, high school on Fridays, so of course Thursdays, Mondays too. But yeah, we need it. Tuesdays, a great time for some MAC football. So that's a lot of fun. But man, both teams started 1-4 overall. Now they were both playing some tough opponents, but still, the improvement by both of these programs has been so interesting to watch, and I that makes me feel even more mysterious who's going to win this game, because both of them have just been getting better and better each week. So who's going to break first?
Yeah, well, I think we saw Ball State was able to take advantage early against NIU and go out to that 19-7 lead. And even though their offense kind of slowed down in that second half, their defense, despite giving up a touchdown, was still able to put pressure on NIU and force them into difficult third downs as well as long field goals. And I think that's what Ball State's going to have to do as well. We talked about having to force on third downs, but for Ball State, it's establishing a good running game early and able to get that offense rolling, because Miami will feel pressured if they are trailing, and then they're going to have to try and find their way, find their groove back into the game. And if not, Ball State's going to trust their defense, trust their offense, and then honestly, special teams with how we've seen Jackson Corville, that again, Ball State could be walking out of here only one game below 500.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because we do need to bring up the kickers for these games, not just Corville, but also Dom Jobin for Miami of Ohio. So Corville, first of all, of course, the 4 of 5 in this past game, made a 50-yarder and a 52-yarder. His only miss was blocked. He also shanked an extra point. Not really sure why, but he's been getting. He hasn't had as many chances as most kickers would, but he's been very, very accurate on the season. And then Jobin for Miami of Ohio, 16 for 18 on the year. He's 4 of 5 from the 40 to 49 range and 1 of 2 from 50 plus. Also has only missed 1 extra point on the season. So kickers might not always get as much love as we know, but that could be a big story in such a close game, kind of like it was last week.
Yeah, and I think something to definitely keep in mind of is this is a night game and the wind is going to be blowing. So for the kickers, they're going to have to adjust to the wind and see kind of which direction it's going in, and especially at this time of year in November when the seasons start to change. And even though it is mid-60s tomorrow, that wind is going to be blowing, and for the kickers, they're going to have to adjust to see how much obviously leverage it's going to have, either going left or right. But that's a big factor. And between these kickers, we've seen them time and time again make big kicks in the moments. So we're going to see if they're going to be able to do it again tomorrow or tonight.
Yeah, I bet as we're recording now on the day before this will be released, of course, on the day of, but Caden, but I predict we will see a 50+ yard field goal made. That's my hot take for this game. I'm not sure which team will do it, but it's going to happen. There's going to be a 50+ yard field goal in this one. How about besides kicking, of course, how about the receiving for Miami of Ohio? They have Ball State, of course, uses Tanner Koziel, their tight end, as their number one receiver. They use a lot of Braden Sloan. They use wide receivers as well. I feel like it's more of a balanced attack. For Miami, their top 3 receivers are all wideouts, and they all have gotten significant yardage on this season. I mean, Cade McDonald, 38 catches for 507 yards, 2 scores. Javon Tracy, 31 receptions for 429 yards and 4 scores. And then Reggie Virgil, just 22 catches, but 409 yards and 5 touchdowns on the season. So I think this could be of course, we know the defensive line is going to matter. It always does in any football game. We know the linebackers will matter, but I think this could be a huge, huge test for Ball State's secondary, and I'm really curious to see how they will hold up this time.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's interesting that you bring up the secondary, because I actually want to talk briefly about the running game, Mosey, for the Miami Redhawks, because he is a very explosive running back, and for him, it's once he gets into that second level of defense, that secondary, that's where Ball State's going to make those open field tackles, or else he'll be gone, because we said he's got that breakaway speed. Now, getting back to the wideouts, Miami has a lot of talented wide receivers. Here's the thing, Ball State, especially as of late, has been able to force wide receivers into either tough, difficult plays to make, or kind of pressured them. We talked about Jordan Coleman, Miles Norwood. A lot of these secondary guys have really stepped up, especially as of late, and are only going to continue to provide, big chances for Ball State's offense to take over.
Keon Mosey, as you were mentioning, the running back, 6.3 yards per carry on the season, 545 yards, 2 touchdowns, and had a $120, I believe. Yeah, $120 against Central Michigan.
Yeah, and he's consecutively putting up almost 100 yards, and I think it's honestly less than 15 carries a game. I mean, that's in some impressive stats. When you put it into perspective about Braden Sloan having, I believe it was 14 carries, and Pepperton having right around there and only scoring getting about 50 to 60 yards, and you're talking about Mosey for Miami getting almost 100 yards a game in less than 15. I mean, that speaks volume of the offensive line for the Red Hawks as well.
All right, Caden, well, we're about to wrap it up. I just have one more question. Didn't prepare you for this, but hey, if you had to pick the position besides quarterback on Ball State's team that will dictate whether they win or lose this game, what position would you say?
I think it's got to go with the running backs, because we talked about the rushing defense for the Red Hawks, and Pepperton as well as Sloan have both stepped up in many ways this season. Who's going to be the bigger one to step up? I don't think that's the question. I think it's going to be, how are they going to step up? How are they going to make a difference? And something that we saw last year that also we have to take into account is Kyle Kelly had a rushing touchdown. We know he's going to be a third option, and he's going to be available for that game for Ball State, whether they're going to run a trickery or they're going to just casually hand it off to Kyle. But be aware that he will be in the game and make a difference as well for the Cardinals.
Well, thank you, Caden. That will pretty much do it for this episode of Linking the Chains. Cade Johnson is our live technician. He is Caden Vincent. I'm your host, Isaiah Rosner. Ball State versus the Miami Redhawks at 8 p.m. tonight. Have a good one.
2 seconds and 1, and Ball State will walk home victorious.
Linking the Chains is hosted and produced weekly by Isaiah Rosner. This has been a production of Ball State Sports Link.